The rain was relentless that night, pounding against the windshield in a steady rhythm that made every mile heavier. Claire tightened her grip on the steering wheel, her knuckles pale in the dim glow of the dashboard lights. She had been driving for hours, trying to make it across the state before dawn, but exhaustion was gnawing at her. The storm had turned the two-lane highway into a blur of dark asphalt and streaks of water, and visibility had shrunk to almost nothing. Her phone had no signal. The GPS had frozen 30 minutes ago, and now the only light ahead came from a crooked neon sign that flickered against the darkness like a dying heartbeat. She slowed the car and squinted through the rain-smeared glass. Motel, vacancy. The letters buzzed, some of them burned out, leaving only a fractured word, MOL. Claire hesitated. She hated roadside motels, hated the smell of stale carpets, peeling wallpaper, and the kind of silence that carried weight. But tonight she didn't have a choice. Driving further was dangerous. She pulled into the empty parking lot, the tires hissing across the wet gravel. The building loomed ahead, long and low, with its row of identical doors facing the highway. Most of the windows were dark, except for the pale glow of an office near the entrance. Claire killed the engine and sat for a moment, listening to the rain battering the roof. Something about the place felt wrong. Still, she forced herself out of the car, dragging her bag from the back seat. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of wet earth and something faintly metallic she couldn't place. She hurried toward the office, her boots splashing in shallow puddles. The doorbell chimed as she pushed it open. Inside, the lobby looked dated, a cracked linoleum floor, yellowed lampshades, and a dusty rack of outdated tourist brochures. Behind the counter stood a man. He was tall and gaunt, with thinning hair slicked back, his skin pale under the humming fluorescent lights. His smile stretched a little too wide, teeth too evenly spaced as if practiced in the mirror. His eyes, however, didn't smile. They stayed flat and unblinking, following her every movement. "Evening," he said, voice low and gravelly. "Rough night for driving." "Yeah," Claire muttered, setting her bag down and forcing a polite smile. "Do you have any rooms available?" The man's smile widened. "Always. Not many folks stop by these days." He slid a ledger across the counter, the pages warped from years of use. A fountain pen rested beside it. Claire hesitated. The pages were filled with names, dates, and scribbles in neat, deliberate handwriting. Something about the consistency unsettled her. All the signatures looked eerily similar, as if written by the same hand. She quickly scrawled her name, Claire Thompson, and handed the pen back. "Room 7, the man said. He reached under the counter and pulled out a tarnished brass key with a heavy tag attached. "Down the row, third door on your right." She took the key and turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Be careful with the storm," he added softly. "It has a way of keeping people trapped." Claire glanced back. His smile hadn't faded. The walk to room 7 felt longer than it should have. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the silence that filled the lot was worse. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room smelled faintly of mildew. A single lamp buzzed on the nightstand, casting long shadows over the faded curtains. Claire shut the door behind her and locked it twice. She let out a breath, set her bag down, and sat on the edge of the bed. The springs groaned under her weight. For a moment, everything was still. And then she noticed it. A small, red light in the corner of the room just above the dresser. It blinked once. The camera lens. Her stomach dropped. Claire stood frozen, the storm outside muffled by the heavy walls. Slowly she backed toward the door. But when her hand touched the handle, a low hum filled the room. The air conditioner sputtered to life, though she hadn't turned it on. And faintly, beneath the mechanical drone, she swore she heard a whisper. A man's voice. "Welcome to the Motel of No Return." Claire's hand froze on the door handle. Her pulse pounded in her ears so loudly that she almost couldn't hear the storm anymore. The whisper hadn't come from inside the room. It had sounded as if it were leaking through the walls, low and deliberate, like someone speaking from just beyond the plaster. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to turn the lock. But the handle didn't budge. She rattled it, pulled, even threw her weight against the door. Nothing. The lock hadn't jammed. It was as if the mechanism itself refused to move. Her chest tightened. She turned back toward the blinking red light on the dresser. The camera stared back, unblinking, like an eye that had been waiting for her to notice. "No," she whispered under her breath. "No, this can't be." A knock. It came from the wall. Not the door. The wall to her left. A slow, deliberate knock, 3 sharp taps that vibrated through the thin drywall. Claire's heart jumped into her throat. She pressed her back against the door, clutching her phone even though she knew there was no signal. She thought about dialing 911 anyway, desperate for the comfort of hearing the tones ring out, but before she could, the knock came again. This time, closer to the headboard of the bed. Someone was inside the wall. She grabbed her bag and fumbled for her car keys. Her first instinct was to smash the window and make a run for it. But when she yanked open the curtain, her breath caught. Her car was gone. The parking lot outside was empty. Claire staggered back, nearly tripping over the bed. She had just parked it there. She had locked it. And now nothing. Only wet pavement glistening under the dim glow of the flickering motel sign. The hum of the air conditioner deepened suddenly, vibrating through the floor. And then, without warning, the TV in the corner clicked on by itself. Static. A hiss of white noise filled the room, sharp and grating. Claire flinched, hands covering her ears. But within the static, shapes began to flicker. Shadows forming and dissolving. Faces. For a moment, she swore she saw her own reflection staring back at her, mouth wide in a silent scream. The screen flickered, and the static gave way to an image. A grainy black and white feed of a hallway. The hallway of the motel. Room numbers flashed in and out of focus, doors identical to hers. The camera angle shifted slowly, crawling down the row of rooms like someone was walking with a handheld camera. Closer, closer, until it stopped in front of room 7. Her room. Claire's chest heaved. She rushed to the TV, fumbling for the power button, but it refused to shut off. The picture shook, static lines cutting through the image before finally resolving into something else. The screen showed Claire inside the room, her exact posture, her exact expression of horror, the blinking light above the dresser visible in the corner. It was a live feed. She stumbled back, her stomach lurching. And then, from the TV speakers, a voice whispered again. The same one she had heard through the wall. You checked in, Claire. No one checks out. The screen cut to black. At that exact moment, the lights in the room went out. Darkness swallowed her. Only the faint red blink of the camera remained. Claire's breath rasped in the dark, quick and shallow. She couldn't see her own hands in front of her face. Only that small red light pulsed steadily like a heartbeat in the corner of the room. Her phone. She fumbled for the flashlight, her trembling thumb grazing the screen until a cold beam of light cut through the darkness. The relief lasted only a second, because the light caught something that hadn't been there before. On the mirror above the dresser, words had appeared. Written in something smeared and dark. Don't turn around. Claire froze, muscles locking in terror. Her instinct screamed to spin, to see what lurked behind her. But every hair on her body stood on end, warning her. Whatever had written that message might still be there. Her phone flickered, the light dimming, glitching in and out. She whispered frantically to herself. It's just a trick. Someone's messing with me. I need to get out, now. The knocking returned. Not from the wall this time. From the floorboards beneath her feet. Slow. Hollow. Almost like someone crawling beneath the room. She backed up, her shoes squeaking on the laminate. The knocking followed, directly under her, as if tracking her every step. The floor creaked sharply. A crack split across the laminate, jagged and black. Dust puffed upward as if the ground itself were breathing. Claire screamed and bolted for the door. She grabbed the handle and yanked, but it finally gave way. The door flew open into the rain-soaked hallway. She stumbled out, gasping, desperate for air, for escape, for any sign of another person. But the hallway was empty. Every door stood slightly ajar, swaying gently as if someone had just walked through them. A cold draft whispered past her, carrying a faint smell of mildew and something coppery. Her eyes caught movement at the far end of the corridor. A shadow. The shape of a man, tall, gaunt, standing just at the edge of the flickering light. "Hello?" she cried, her voice breaking. "Please, help me." The figure didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there watching. Claire clutched her phone tighter, its beam trembling across the peeling wallpaper. Slowly she edged toward the stairs. Every step echoed too loudly, like the motel was amplifying her movements. She glanced back. The figure was gone. Her knees nearly buckled with relief, but before she could move again, a new sound filled the hallway. A low, guttural hum, like several voices moaning in unison. It rose from the open doors, from the vents, from behind the very walls. Claire's head whipped around. Through one of the open doors, she caught sight of something that froze her blood. A room identical to hers. Same bed. Same dresser. Same blinking red light. And inside that room on the bed sat herself. The other Claire stared blankly at the wall, lips moving in a whisper she couldn't hear. Claire staggered back, colliding with the wall. Her breath came out in short, panicked gasps. The hum grew louder, filling her skull. Every door down the hallway creaked wider, as though invisible hands pushed them open in unison. And then, from behind her, just inches from her ear, "You can't leave." Claire spun around. The hallway was empty. Claire's body refused to move. Her legs felt as if they were filled with cement, her chest heaving in shallow bursts. That voice, close, intimate, like someone had leaned right against her shoulder, still lingered in her ear. She clutched her phone like a weapon, sweeping its trembling beam around the hallway. Nothing. The peeling wallpaper. The warped wood. The endless open doors, each leading into some shadowy unknown. Then she heard it. Footsteps. But not hers. They came from behind one of the half-open doors, slow and deliberate, pacing in rhythm with her panicked breaths. Claire forced her feet to move, stumbling backwards toward the stairwell. Her shoes squeaked on the warped linoleum. She held her breath, praying the sound would stop. It didn't. Instead, the door at the far end of the hallway creaked wider. Just a sliver. Just enough for her light to catch a pale hand curling around its edge. The fingers were too long, unnaturally so, the nails dark and sharp. Her throat closed in a strangled scream. The humming returned, vibrating through the walls, a chorus of low, mournful tones that seemed to come from every room at once. The motel itself was alive, breathing, watching. Claire spun and sprinted for the stairs. The wood groaned under her frantic steps as she flew down the narrow stairwell, her shoulders scraping plaster, her phone beam jerking wildly. When she reached the lobby, her heart sank. The front door, the one she'd used to come in, was gone. In its place, another hallway, identical to the one upstairs. Same doors. Same peeling wallpaper. Same suffocating dark. "No, no, no," Claire sobbed, backing away. "This isn't real. It can't be real." Her phone flickered again, the battery bar now flashing red. Panic surged. If the light went out, she'd be swallowed whole. She turned to the reception desk, hoping, praying for a phone, a bell, anything. What she saw instead rooted her to the spot. Behind the desk sat the motel manager, the woman who had given her the key. But her face was wrong. Her skin sagged loosely, as if it had been draped over her skull like a mask. Her mouth was open, wide and too still, yet the humming poured out of her in a relentless drone. The woman's eyes lifted. Milky. Unfocused. And then, slowly, her mouth closed, but the humming didn't stop. It grew louder. From behind Claire. From above. From beneath the floorboards. Claire's scream tore through the lobby as every door in the endless hallway swung open at once, slamming against the walls in a deafening chorus. A flood of shadows poured out, stretching, writhing human shapes without faces, their movements twitching and jagged like broken marionettes. They moved toward her. And among them, walking calmly at their center, was the figure she had seen upstairs. Tall. Gaunt. Watching. He lifted a finger and pointed directly at her. Her phone flickered and died. The darkness consumed everything. Pitch black. Claire's scream cut off the second her phone went dark, swallowed by a silence so suffocating it pressed against her ears. She couldn't even hear her own ragged breathing anymore. It was as if the motel had stolen the sound from her throat. Then, one faint glow. Her phone screen, dead a moment ago, blinked back to life. But not as a flashlight. Instead, a video began to play on its own. The glow lit her trembling hands and she realized what she was looking at. It was her. Claire standing in that exact lobby. Same clothes. Same expression of terror. But the version on the screen wasn't moving. It was just staring into the camera. Eyes wide. Mouth slightly open. As if it had been waiting for her. Her pulse thundered in her chest, yet the silence in the room remained unbroken. Suddenly, the figure on the screen tilted its head. Slowly. Precisely. Then its lips stretched into a grin, unnatural, tearing too wide across the face. Claire dropped the phone. The video kept playing, its glow illuminating the warped floorboards. A single whisper slithered out of the speaker. "We've been waiting for you." The air turned frigid. A wet, moldy smell filled her nostrils as something brushed past her ankle, cold, slick, like a hand dragging itself along her skin. She stumbled back, but the walls felt closer now, like they had shifted inward. Her eyes darted toward the reception desk. The manager was still there, but now her head was bent at a grotesque angle, her chin pressed against her chest. Her arms had lengthened, fingers dragging across the counter, nails screeching against the wood. The humming returned, only this time, it came from inside Claire's own head. Vibrating in her skull, drowning out thought, beating in rhythm with her racing heart. She pressed her hands over her ears, but it didn't stop. Then, movement. The figure stepped out of the hallway. His silhouette filled the entrance, his body impossibly tall, shoulders scraping the ceiling. He moved with a jerking slowness, each step echoing like a coffin lid being shut. In his hand he held a single motel key. Claire's key. He raised it to his lips and with a voice that wasn't his but hers whispered, "Room 6 is ready." The key dropped from his fingers and clattered to the floor at her feet. Claire looked down. There was no key. Only a slip of paper. Her name was written on it. And below it 2 words in fresh, wet ink. Checked in. The key was still warm in her hand. Claire clutched it tightly, her pulse hammering in her ears. She wanted to drop it, to throw it into the void of the hallway, but it seemed fused to her palm, like the motel itself had chosen her. The hallway stretched endlessly, every door marked with numbers that pulsed faintly. But her eyes locked on one, room 6. Its door was cracked open, leaking a pale, sickly glow that seemed to beckon her closer. "Don't," she whispered to herself, though her legs were already moving. The boards beneath her feet creaked like they were groaning under the weight of her decision. Inside the room the air was colder, sharper. Her breath fogged immediately, though she could hear the faint hum of something electrical. And then she saw them. The walls were covered, floor to ceiling, in photographs. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, each of the motel's guests over the years. Some were smiling, caught in innocent moments. Others showed raw terror, mouths open mid-scream, as though the photo had been taken the second before something unspeakable happened. Claire's stomach twisted violently as she scanned the photos. Some of the faces were familiar. She'd seen them on missing posters, on news reports, in the unsolved cases that littered the internet. And then she froze. The last row of photos was of her. Every single one, taken just minutes apart, showed her progression through the motel tonight. Entering the lobby. Speaking to the manager. Walking down the hallway. Dropping her phone. Reaching for the key. The final photo showed her standing exactly where she was now, in front of the wall of pictures, staring in horror. The camera clicked. Claire whipped around. In the corner of the room stood a tall, shadowed figure, its face obscured, holding an old-fashioned camera that gleamed under the pale light. The air grew impossibly heavy as the figure slowly lifted its head. Its face wasn't a face. It was a blank canvas, pale and stretched, with the faint outline of countless mouths pressed into the surface, as though trapped just beneath. When it inhaled, the mouths moved, whispering all at once. "Stay." Claire's body locked. She wanted to scream, but the sound caught in her throat. Her hands trembled as the key seared against her palm, burning now, branding her. Behind her, the door to room 6 slammed shut. The photographs on the walls began to peel away, one by one, fluttering like dead leaves until the only ones left were hers. Hundreds of them now, multiplying across the walls as if the room itself was swallowing her image whole. The figure raised the camera again. The last thing Claire saw was the blinding flash. When it faded, the room was empty. The photos on the wall no longer showed hundreds of faces. Only hers, dozens, hundreds, thousands, all frozen in that last moment of terror. Down the hall, the neon vacancy sign flickered back to life. The motel was ready for its next guest.